Rev up your engines!
Well, if you don't realize that speed kills the range of electric cars, as I've been telling for years, here's proof. A 2023 Cadillac Lyriq was tested going 70 miles an hour and going 80 miles an hour. At 70 miles an hour, it had a range of 330 miles, but at 80 miles an hour, only 10 miles an hour more, it had a range of 245 miles. That means it lost 27% of its efficiency. Yeah. Try that with gasoline cars. Not that much difference between 70 and 80 miles an hour driving. But it is with electric cars, because what people don't understand, if they don't, they need to learn. Electric motors, the faster they go, the less efficient they are. They're great for low speeds, phenomenal for low speeds. High speeds, not so phenomenal. And in this case, look at the range the vehicle lost. 27% of its range just going 10 miles an hour faster. Now, that's pure speed. Let's say if you're towing something, forget it. Some of these things will lose 50-60% of their range if they're towing a load. Electric motors are not good at high speeds. Unless they're doing small runs inside a city, they're a joke. They got to carry all that weight. They need bigger batteries, which weigh more, which means even bigger batteries. It's like chasing a tail. You're never going to catch it, right? This proves with an actual vehicle, Cadillac Lyriq, that's the range they use if you go faster. So as they say with electric cars, you can go slow and get better range, but you can't go fast and get better range. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You either have to drive slow and get a better range, or drive fast and be charging it up even more than usual. I know that for a fact because I tested out an electric car when I was in Rhode Island, and it lost 5 miles of range when I drove it half a mile full speed. The range went down 5 miles driving at half a mile full speed, and that'll just show you. Hey, these things are not made for fast speeds either. They're not made for long distance. They're not made for all kinds of things. So why anybody buys them is beyond me. Tim in Melbourne, guess he's Nazi, says, I got a question about tire monitoring sensors. I got a 2010 Camaro, I'm selling it, but one of the sensors has failed. The set of sensors in the car, aftermarket sensors, less than 2 years old. So I'm going to replace the one bad sensor. Will the new sensor sourced from a different manufacturer than the other 3 sensors work on my system? Maybe, maybe not. I can't say, you know. If it was made correctly, it should, because it's supposed to give out a certain frequency, right? Like, especially if you're buying some cheapy sensor made in China, it probably won't work with the other sensors. It might not even work if you bought all 4 Chinese ones and put them on. You know, you're only going to know if you try it out, because they're all on different frequencies and they have different capabilities of the range, how far they can go. And of course, they have to be reprogrammed. Some of them you put them in and they won't reprogram with the system because the software doesn't work with them. My advice is if you changed 4 of them before and now you only need to change 1, just change it with the same sensor. Make it simple. I mean, if you want to gamble, go ahead and try. But, you know, the guy's going to have to take the tire apart, put the sensor in, rebalance the tire, and then recalibrate the system. Then you'd find out. Me, I just buy one of the same sensors. Or I just tell the guy I'm selling it to, hey, that sensor's bad. You need to replace that one. Rather than getting involved. Let me tell you something. Fixing a car before you sell it with little things like that usually isn't worth it. You can tell them, it needs a sensor. Knock off, $150 or something. Selling a car rather than get involved in fixing something that might get really complex. Unless you could find one of those sensors that matches the other 3 and buy that. Because if you're mixing and matching, I couldn't tell you whether it's going to work or not. They might not have made that one the same as the other 3. And there's no way of telling unless you put it in, and you spent your money, and if it doesn't work, you just wasted it. Scotty the Man says, how good is a Nissan Sentra? I bought an 07 Sentra, 149,000 miles with a dent for $850. Then I bought a whole parts car, 12 Sentra, with good engine for $350. How good are these cars? I know the CVTs don't last long, but I have one that only got 88,000 miles on it. Is this car better than an 07 Auto Ford Focus, which is the car I sold to get this one? Let's put it this way. They're both kind of crappy cars. The Ford Focus too, right? But the Nissan Sentra is better because it's an 07. Back then, they're better than the new ones are. The new ones, I think, are absolute piles of junk. But at least those were better made. And let's face the facts. You paid $850 for the one you're driving and $350 for a used one that's got an engine and tranny you can use. You got such a small amount invested. What the heck? Use them. Fix one with parts from the other. See how long it lasts. gas. You got no money invested in it at all. I personally wouldn't buy one myself, but for that price, hey, it's peanut money, right? And that's why if you can get things that actually still run and you're getting them for peanut money, you're making out like a bandit. I don't know how it is in Australia, but in the United States, the average cost of running a car per year is pretty close to $5,000, right? And you paid $850 for one that's running and $350 for a parts car. You're already ahead of the game if the thing lasts a couple of months. Always keep that in mind. Money spent versus value gotten. Well, the media may give you a bunch of crap about how all these big windmills, the electric turbines in the ocean are going to save us all. Well, gee, reality's kind of biting them in the rear end now. The second wind developer of the big wind turbines off of Martha Vineyard going to Rhode Island out in the ocean has terminated its contract because he said, oh, well, we can't make any money doing this. South Coast Wind was a company that was going to be building these wind turbines. And listen to this. South Coast Wind agreed to pay utility companies $60 million to terminate contracts the parties previously struck for the clean energy deal. They're paying $60 million bucks, kind of like a fine, for breaking a contract of building these wind turbines. If a company is actually paying out $60 million to get out of the deal, they'll tell you what a crappy deal it is. It's all fantasy. How much electricity they're going to create, which they don't. How long they last, which they don't last all that long. These companies are already walking on the deals, and they paid money to get out of the deal. Contracts can be broken, people. These guys looked at it, the South Coast Wind, and they said, this is not a financially viable project, and they're paying the $60 million pretty much in fines to the other companies that were involved and saying, we're out of here right now. Can you imagine a company paying people $60 million bucks to get out of a deal? That must have been one stinker of a deal. And of course, the hilarious thing of it all is the government, which has no connection with reality, is pushing the wind stuff while it is not economically viable. Listen to this. By law, Massachusetts must secure 5,600 megawatts by 2027 to comply with the state clean energy law. So they make a law that says they got to build these things, but the companies that are building are saying, we're out of here. This stuff doesn't make us any money, right? As I've said over and over again, the only way this stuff can even be built is with millions and billions of American taxpayer dollars funding these things. The companies say, hey, this isn't even economically viable. We're out of here. So you have the government saying, oh, well, you got to build these things. And then the company saying, well, we're not going to build them. Here's $60 million fine. We can't build this stuff. It's a money loser, right? Of course, the government doesn't know anything about profit and loss, about how things actually work, about what's useful and what isn't useful. Every time they talk about these stinking windmills, all I think about is a few miles from my house in Rhode Island, there is a windmill sitting there, and it hasn't moved in 15 years or more. It broke a while ago. Canadian company owned it, went bankrupt. Nobody could fix it. Cost too much money to tear it down, so it's been sitting for 15 years doing nothing. And this is on land. Imagine how much more it costs to build them on the ocean, which of course is full of salt water, which has salt mist in the air, and the salt eats the rotors up even faster than the ones on land. This fantasy is now meeting reality, and the companies that are supposed to be building them are backing out as fast as they can. And what is a contract? It's a legal agreement, right? Well, companies can go bankrupt. They can buy out the contracts. Even they're saying, this is a load of horse manure. We're out of here. Well, it must be a cold day. Mitch McConnell froze for the second time. This time it was like 30 seconds. He just stood there. Like Mr. Freeze got him with a gun and he can't move, right? Now, let's face the facts, people. These guys are getting too old. They don't know what's going on. But since we have this ridiculous 10-year system and they allow these old geezers that are falling apart to be representatives of us in Washington, D.C., this country's going to go into a quagmire. These guys have no idea what's going on anymore. Yet they allow them to be in office forever. I mean, some of them are, they die in office. They're so old, they finally just conk out from old age. Come on now. They don't have the sharpness they used to have. If a guy stands there for 30 seconds and doesn't move, he shouldn't be making decisions that affect us all in the country. I don't care what party any of them are in. It's time to get rid of these old fogies and get somebody who can still talk. Now, I'm not an ageist. I'm old myself, right? But I can still talk and think. I don't freeze up for 30 seconds and stand there, right? Or make ridiculous comments that make no sense, and then your security guys bundle you off and take you away before you say something else stupid, right? Maybe they should have some kind of a test. When you get too old and you can't do it anymore, okay, you gotta retire now, Mitch. Come on now. You're just freezing up. You don't know what's happening. There's got to be some kind of stoppage of having these old geezers that don't know what's going on. If they're actually freezing, their minds are probably frozen in time too. Maybe they still think it's the 1950s or something, and they're young and they're vibrant, but they sure as heck aren't anymore if they can't move. Maybe there's a law. It'd be like NBA. You know, they got a shot clock. Maybe they should have a motion clock for politicians. If you freeze up for more than 15 seconds, that's it. You're out. Time to put somebody else in. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.